The issue of balance has come up a few times for Ashes of Creation, and yes, here it is again. So the hot topic this month, on a bit of a more serious note, is crowd control, right? You're gonna have a ton of differing opinions on this. So the question is, how do you control the crowd? I mean, guys, come on, man. That's my best material. Work with me. Let's get into the first question. How do you feel about crowd control and crowd control breaks in MMORPGs? So, as a former mage player in WoW, I love crowd control, turning enemies into sheeps, hitting some wild frost novas which stops the enemies in their tracks. As most of you know, mages play at a range, so it's pretty important for that class to be able to dictate where things are going, because if you get too close, then that's trouble. I personally enjoyed the class, and from what we've seen with the Bard so far, it's looking like it's going to play similarly to other range classes. And because I don't want to be running up to mobs, hitting them with my flute, what the heck? See how stupid that looked?
What is that?
I think the reason that I'm such a fan of crowd control is because of my playstyle, which makes complete sense. Sit back, do some damage, support the other players, and keep a watchful eye. Factor everything I just said and think about the top plays we'll see from bards. I'm not saying that we won't have melee bards, but I really do believe caster bards are going to be far better. Now, when it comes to crowd control breaks in MMOs, I think the answer is pretty obvious here. They're 100% needed. Can you imagine if people were running around and no one was able to do anything about it? We'd have so many trolls doing this because they know they couldn't be stopped. And you and I both know that. That doesn't make for a good experience. If I start playing a game today and figure out there's a broken mechanic that's not going to be fixed ASAP, today will be my last day playing that game. If you're going to have crowd control, then we must have crowd control breaks. It's like night and day, red and blue, black and white. Now that we've established having crowd control and being able to break it, where do we go from here? Next question. How do you feel about all archetypes in Ashes of Creation having some form of a crowd control break? I think on paper, this sounds like such a great idea, but I think if we really sit down, even for a second, we'll see that it isn't as a solid idea as we think at all. It goes back to the infamous Incredibles line.
And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
If we give all archetypes some form of crowd control break, then is there any strategy in terms of picking what initial archetype you want to play? When it comes to crowd control, at least. One thing that I think most of the Ashes of Creation community can agree on is that people want the feeling like they need a party, feeling like they need your skills, and feeling like they need your help. This isn't a slight at any modern MMO, and we don't have to dive deep into the topic, but everyone can do everything. So I think if we sat here and decided to give every single archetype some type of crowd control break, then that would be us getting ready to go down that path, and I believe that's something we should stray from. With Alpha 2 coming up very soon, I think maybe if this was something that Intrepid wanted to test by giving each class a crowd control break that's universally the same, just to see how it goes, then sure. But the feedback during that time would be very, very crucial. I don't think that's a route that Intrepid will take, but if they did, I don't think it would last very long, because again, we're introducing something that is leading us down a path that we don't want to go. Again, how would the player base pan out if we all had some type of break? Are certain classes going to be desired because we all have one now and most battles have become stalemate? I think it makes sense to give breaks to a few classes and allow them to excel in that, because that could be part of their class identity. On the other hand, we'd have to give other classes something that the classes that have breaks don't have, right? And it'd be in the same right, they'd have to excel at that. When you do this, we get to spread everything out, creating a more diverse population. Our last question is, what are your thoughts about choosing crowd control or crowd control breaks versus damage when allocating skill points? When I first read this, I thought that those specific classes should automatically have crowd control abilities and they shouldn't have to battle with damage abilities. But As I thought about it, I'm actually on the other side. I'll start by stating that it needs to be balanced. We don't need players running around and the only abilities they have are crowd controlling abilities. I think everyone should be able to spec into how they want to play, within reason, because again, having so many crowd control abilities to the point where you're not even doing enough damage, when it's time to do damage, is pointless, and it'll hurt the game more than it can help it. Like most abilities, crowd control abilities should have a cap of where you can spec them out to. Once you hit that, you go back into damage. This is to ensure that no crazy builds are being made. This could actually be the biggest issue, and I say this because Ashes of Creation has a lot of PvP, more than I think we're giving it credit for. So when we look at these situations, it's not just, oh, how does this build affect this mob group or whatever, but how is this going to affect other players? If we don't find the balance very early on, we're going to be in trouble, which is another reason that I think all of these issues or questions should be resolved during Alpha 2. Let me say as well, y'all, we've been covering the dev discussions for what, past year or so? Can you really believe that this is the last dev discussion before Alpha 2? Since we'll be in Alpha 2, I wonder if these types of discussions will change or if they'll do away with them. They've been such a big part of our community for these past few years because we've had nothing to play. So at the very least, we could count on getting a new dev discussion each month. Either way, if they decide to continue on with them post Alpha 2, we'll still be here discussing them. All right, folks, we are now 11 days away from Alpha 2. So a few things. I know some of you are still looking for a guild. You know how I know? Because your procrastination has seeped through to the point where I can feel it. Even if it's not my guild, please, for the love of playing Ashes, go find a community. Trust me, you'll thank yourself later. Next thing, we have about a week and a half, a week left. This is the most vital time to prepare yourself mentally. I know a lot of you want to go in there and kill everything, but remember, please, that this is an alpha. A lot of people are gonna go in and they're gonna lose hype automatically because you didn't set your expectations. Please, it is a alpha again. I'll talk about this more in my next video since I have one more video releasing before we actually get Alpha 2, but just go in and be ready to have fun. That's the most important thing. I know it sounds super cliche, but seriously, there's no medals for getting world first anything. Because if anything, if anybody's getting any awards around here, it's going to me, okay? I already talked to Steven about this. I'm going to be streaming on Twitch each weekend the Alpha 2 is open, so be sure to follow your boy over there. If you want to apply for my guild memorandum, you are more than welcome to do so. If you haven't created an Ashes of Creation account yet, feel free to do that as well. But yeah, man, it's a few more days and that's it. I feel like we made it. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.